Now, Burkina Faso's president, IBRAHIM Traoré, seems to be facing a lot of assassination attempts, and many are questioning why a leader who seems, or rather is celebrated by his people as someone who's changing the trajectory of Burkina Faso to what they want, would face a lot of resistance from the world, and why, or who would be responsible for the assassination and why. So the leader, Captain IBRAHIM Traoré, has become a symbol of African resistance against Western dominance, or rather what has been called as neo-colonialism. So the Westerners who continue to dominate in various sectors across Africa are, however, unhappy with Traoré, and there have been many claims of attempted plots of coups to overthrow him and maybe even assassinate him. And this has been since 2022 when he took over power. So about a week ago, Burkina Faso's military announced that it had successfully dismantled a significant coup attempt, which they claimed was engineered by, guess who? Yeah, their former colonizers, France. And why would France be doing this? Number one, their soldiers were sent away from Burkina Faso, like out. Two, their bases were closed, and any control, even trade for their gold, because it was nationalized, gold trade was nationalized, and the Burkina Faso leader and the leaders of Mali and Niger exit ECOWAS and decided they're going to be doing trade as the three nations called Sahel. Of course, they have trade with other nations, but they brought together an alliance of the three nations that are all led by coup leaders. So, of course, France is always top suspect. So the Burkinabe Minister of Security, a guy by the name Mahamoud Sana, revealed that the leaders behind the coup attempt were based in Ivory Coast. And of course, the president of Ivory Coast is none other than Alassane Ouattara. And why would Ivory Coast president be suspect? Of course, because Ivory Coast has a lot of ties with France, and of course they're looked at, actually in West Africa, they are looked at as the key influencers of the France business side and interests, and people who cater and mind about the interests of France in Western Africa. So the plot was uncovered following interception of messages that were exchanged between a Burkinabe military officer and leaders of some terrorist groups. So these communications discussed details about the positions of defense and security forces, as well as the ongoing military operations that are happening. This country, because of the jihadists and all these other forces and armed groups that they fight against, of security information that travels across the country. So according to the government of Burkina Faso, the information was shared with these terrorist groups was intended to escalate attacks against security forces and civilians, of course under the government of President Traoré. And the aim was to stir up a revolt against authorities. Of course, when you stir up a revolt against authorities, it means a coup will happen, and what happens? Traoré will lose his seat. So across West Africa, Ivory Coast President Alassane Ouattara is also known for aligning with France's interests in the region. And this stems from the colonization, colonization history, because France colonized a lot of West African nations, and there's what my friend PLO Lumumba cites as a colonial hangover. So a lot of people consider that Alassane Ouattara and some of the leaders across West Africa have this colonial hangover over them, and the idea of believing that they have to work with France in control for them to succeed. I mean, it's not a problem just across West Africa. Even in East Africa, some nations are really having a lot of Western influence in the way things are run, and that doesn't sit well with most citizens. But then again, citizens really do not have much they can do. And since this system, the Western systems are so engraved in the daily lives of the citizens, it becomes a bit hard to separate the two. So since taking over power in 2022 in a coup, the president has expelled the France troops. He nationalized gold mines, and something that I believe was hard for the Westerners to accept is that he allied himself with Russia. So of course this does not sit well with these Westerners, because of course France, the US, not as much of friends with Russia, let's just face it. So this move challenges the traditional Western dominance in Africa, and these actions have made him popular among many Africans, because now as Africans, we've started looking at leadership as important if they focus on interests that work for the nations and not for these people pushing the neo-colonialism agenda. So a lot of the population actually supports Traoré, and not necessarily from Burkina Faso. Even here in Kenya, very many young people and even leaders in the political space who you speak to on a daily, most of them look at it and say Traoré is taking the nation on the right track. So his firm stand against imperialism by the West has raised suspicions that the US and other Western powers may be targeting him, hence the many attempted assassination claims. So as of now, there is no direct evidence of US involvement in assassination plots, none that can be pointed, but history fuels these fears and the claims made by General Langley a few weeks back, the guy from AFRICOM, which is the United States Africa Command Center, a few weeks ago, about misuse of gold and resources for personal use rather than the national interest. Of course, these are things that when people do the 1 + 1, looks like the US is not happy about his leadership. So the other key thing is historical experiences. So CIA was involved in the actions that have been involved in Africa and the killing of certain leaders. For instance, in past African coups, like the killing of Patrice Lumumba in Congo, of course it was carried out by the Belgians, but the investigations and the whole idea of CIA being involved was that they had the knowledge and they played a big role in just in the death of Patrice Lumumba. The other thing was the whole idea of, if you remember the story of Muammar Gaddafi of Libya, he was also alleged to have been killed with the CIA's involvement. So when you look at this pattern, then it makes many believe that Traoré could face similar threats. So those recent comments that accused Traoré of misusing gold, and of course now these ones intensified the suspicions, and many Africans saw these remarks as interference, which of course have sparked protests in support of Traoré. So Traoré himself actually claims to have survived a numerous number of assassination attempts, some allegedly involving foreign-backed conspirators, but no proof links. But of course, I don't think you'd just wake up and say they are being targeted. It's from experience. And also remember, this is a country where a former coup leader also, Thomas Sankara, faced the same sort of attempt and was actually murdered. So knowing what they know, having gone through history, then they have every reason to believe what they have. So America's criticism of Traoré ties with Russia and its suspension of aid to Burkina Faso is a suggestion that they are against his rule. And of course, the fact that he's a junta, that does not sit well with countries that support democracy. But many African sites, I mean, they may not be democratically elected, but it's working for the people. So maybe even the Burkinabe people are okay with it. So his popularity grows by the day, and of course this stems from his bold defiance against Western powers, the vision of a self-reliant Africa. Many Africans, of course, they say he's the modern-day Thomas Sankara, a revolutionary hero, and many wish him success. Of course, his government struggles with a lot of rising jihadist violence and what others deem as authoritarian policies, which raises questions about long-term stability. I mean, the danger of also coup leaders is that, I mean, as of now, Traoré is doing very good for his country and receiving praises and, all that, and it works for Burkina Faso. The challenge is if he ever decided not to leave power, because it has two extremes. Either work well for the country or go the other direction. We just hope for Burkina Faso it doesn't take that direction. So of course, Western powers, including France and the US, remain their bigger challenge because he has no control. I mean, if they were to attack him and plan his assassination, very easy, because these are first world countries, technology on high, and they can coordinate with other friends in Africa and do it for him. But that is, of course, his biggest challenge. It's therefore seen that Traoré is seen as a figure representing Africa's border struggle to break from their foreign influence while fighting poverty and insecurity. And we wish him the very best on that. His success could shape the future of the Sahel region, which is the three nations that I have built, which is Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, you know, they exit ECOWAS and formed their alliance. So the aspirations, I mean, when we as Africans look at him, we're looking at a leader who carries the aspirations of so many African people of, you know, breaking loose and getting to their freedom of self-reliance. And he's probably, his success will determine Africa's true sovereignty. We as Africans actually support Traoré, want the best for Burkina Faso, and pray that that country grows itself. We hope he survives and is not assassinated and grows Burkina Faso to the best. And also, when the time comes for elections, I hope he allows civilian rule of law to take its course. So yeah, that's the story of Burkina Faso. Those are the people that would maybe try to attempt him for selfish reasons, but the people of Burkinabe are happy, and if they're happy, so are we as Africans, and so should everyone else be, yeah? Thank you for watching to the end. We'll catch you on the next episode. And as they say, Viva Africa, and Burkina Faso for the win in Africa. The world is fast-paced and sometimes you miss the action. What perspectives do you have? What is the truth? Is the world at war? Join me, Sarah Mwangi, as we make sense of the information overload.